Hi everybody, welcome back to Living Traditions Homestead. Well, today I'm going to be doing some more spring harvesting. The spring harvests are always the sweetest because it's been such a long time since we've been harvesting anything out of a garden or the greenhouse or buckets just like this. So I absolutely love the beginning of harvest season, and I thought maybe you guys would like to come along. Now today I'm going to be doing harvesting of 4 different things, and I'm going to be freezing some, packaging some up for the refrigerator so that we can use them over time fresh, and then we're going to get some things also into the freeze dryer. So we're going to spend quite a bit of time together today, and I am so glad that you have joined me for some harvesting and preserving today. Now we're going to start over here today with this spinach. I've got 2 buckets of spinach here. Spinach is a cool or cold weather plant. It does the best when it's cool or cold. When it starts warming up, the spinach starts to taste a little bitter, and then it will bolt, which means it will grow really tall, put on flowers, and then those flowers will turn into seed. That's just the natural life cycle of most plants. But when they start bolting, the flavor of them isn't as good, and with spinach, it's not as sweet, it's not as tender, and it starts to get bitter. So both of these buckets are ready to be completely harvested. They don't have time to create more leaves before they bolt, so this will just be the final harvest of the spinach. Now spinach is very, very easy to harvest. We're actually just going to cut every single one of these leaves off of its plant that is attached to the soil and put them in our harvesting basket. Now later on we'll dig up the roots and compost them and be able to use this bucket for something else. So today I'm going to be using a harvesting knife. Actually, my dad got me this as a gift. It's from Fiskars. It's a nice long knife. They are available on Amazon. It just helps get a bunch of harvesting done very quickly. Now on this spinach over here in this bucket, I'm just going to push the leaves aside to expose where the stems are right near the bottom of this plant. And I am going to just start cutting that right from the plant. I got a bunch of it. I need to do a little bit more cutting. And this whole plant is going to come up at once. See, that is a nice amount of spinach. Put that in my basket over here. And then I am just going to keep doing the same thing until both of these buckets are completely harvested. And I might need a bigger basket. This is a lot of spinach. That was quick and easy, and that yielded an entire bushel of spinach. Now, I just want to let you know that that was 12 spinach plants, 6 in each tub. This is the final harvest, although I did harvest quite a bit of spinach fresh for in salads over the last couple of months. So these have been very productive spinach plants, but it's time to move on. These buckets need something else in them. It's time to preserve these for the rest of the year. Now that's not all. Over here also on the very next buckets over is some cabbage that we have been growing, and they're all to the point where I want to harvest them. It's warming up. Soon they will try to bolt as well. So all 4 of their cabbage heads are going to be cut off today and preserved. I'll share with you what I'm going to do with them. So let's go take a look at the cabbage and get them harvested as well. Well, right next to me here are 2 buckets of cabbages. Now you can also see that these buckets have some mesh over them. These are actually fruit tree bags that we bought to put over these buckets so that the cabbage worms can't get onto our cabbage and our broccoli and our cauliflower. The cabbage worm comes from a moth called the cabbage moth. They lay their eggs on all your brassicas, your cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, kale, those kinds of things. And then when the worms hatch, they eat your produce. So one of the easy ways to prevent that so that you don't have to use kind of any sprays is to cover them. Well, we don't have a floating row cover that will work for these guys, so we bought these fruit tree bags and they've been working really great. So I'm going to take the fruit tree bags off of these two cabbage plants. You can see that we've got some nice firm heads here. Over here, that one's the biggest one. And then over here, we've got two smaller ones. Now I could continue to let these smaller cabbages grow a little bit. They could probably use a couple more weeks maybe before they would bolt, but I am seeing some evidence of whiteflies and I don't want the cabbages to get ruined by whiteflies before I can harvest them and while I'm waiting for them to get bigger. So I'm just gonna harvest all 4 of these. We're gonna make a good use of them and I'm super excited to have them. It's been a while since we have grown cabbage, and so I'm excited to get them into the house. So to harvest these guys, I'm just gonna push them over to the side a little bit and get in there with my knife and just cut it away there. I was gonna leave behind some of these leaves that are kind of yucky, and then this will go into my harvesting basket. The second one here, this is the biggest of all 4 of them. Just gonna put it over to the side again. There we go. That's a good one. Now, while these bags did keep out the cabbage moths, it didn't keep out the whiteflies or the aphids. So those are things that we need to keep in mind when we're using them next year to try to find a solution to manage those as well while we're managing the cabbage moths. Okay, let's move on. In the front of the greenhouse, I have some buckets of herbs. This here is cilantro, and it is also bolting. Cilantro is a very cool weather plant, and as soon as it warms up, it bolts. It wants to go to flower, it wants to produce seed, and I want to preserve this so that I can use it in my salsas. That's one thing that's kind of frustrating here in Missouri, is that our growing season is so long that cilantro isn't ready to be picked at the same time that the tomatoes and the peppers are ready to be turned into salsa. So we either need to buy cilantro from the store or preserve the cilantro in a way that can be used when we make salsas. And so that is what I'm going to do today. I have several cilantro plants here, and I actually have a couple in this bucket here. This is a portable herb garden that I have planted for Grace. She can take it with her when she gets married this summer. And so I'm just going to harvest all of this right to the ground and take it into the house. And I will show you how I'm going to preserve that so that it's ready for me to use when I make salsas this summer. So I'm just cutting these off completely right at the ground. Now the last thing that we're going to be harvesting today is under this floating row cover. Remember just a couple minutes ago I was telling you that we don't have a floating row cover system for those things in the buckets that we were growing. That's why we were using those fruit tree bags. Well, this is a floating row cover. It does the same thing as the fruit bags. It keeps the cabbage moths off of our plants so that they don't lay eggs and then their cabbage worms develop and eat all of our plants. So underneath here in this section right here is some kale. It's red Russian kale. We're going to open this up and we're going to harvest almost all of this kale. You can see how absolutely beautiful this kale is. We are going to harvest all of these leaves except for the very small ones on the top. We'll leave those there to continue growing, but we're gonna harvest all of this kale and bring it into the house. Now, we really aren't very big lovers of kale. We don't have kale salads and that kind of thing, but I'm growing it because I know it's nutritious. I'm gonna freeze dry it and then powder it so that I can put the powder in soups and stews and other things that will just kind of disguise the fact that we're eating kale. Well, a couple days have gone by since I harvested all of these veggies. We got busy that afternoon and I just needed to cover them with plastic. Just cover these baskets and tuck some plastic around the top, and I put these in our extra refrigerator. You guys can find comfort knowing that they'll be okay in their baskets if you cover them with some plastic in the refrigerator until you get to them. I do want to take these off now and show you that they're okay. They're okay. The spinach, which is over here, the top layer got a little bit wilted, not too bad at all. And actually, now that they're have been out of the refrigerator for maybe 10 minutes or so, they've perked back up. The refrigerator can be very drying to leaf vegetables. Here is the kale. It's doing pretty well. Here is the cilantro, and then the 4 heads of cabbage. So today I am going to process all of these, and I'm just going to take you along and briefly show you what I'm going to be doing with each one of these. Now, in a scenario like this where I have multiple types of things to process, I really like to just start with the things that are going to be the fastest for me to take care of. And today that means I'm going to take care of the cabbage heads first. Now remember, I said that I'm going to be using these cabbage heads fresh. The fastest thing for me to do with these heads of cabbage is to just put them in a plastic grocery bag and put them in the refrigerator. I'm just going to put them in the vegetable drawer, loosely wrapped in a plastic shopping bag, and that will keep them fresh for actually several weeks, and I can use the cabbage heads fresh whenever I want them. Next, I'm going to be dealing with this cilantro. Now, I'm going to set a little bit aside because we are going to be having chicken tacos later this week, and I want to use some of them, chicken street tacos, and that will be yummy. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take all of this cilantro and I'm going to pick off the leaves, put them in my food processor, and I'm going to add a little bit of water. I'm gonna blend it all up into kind of like a pesto. Then after I get it all chopped up in the food processor, I am actually going to be freezing them in little cubes in this silicone form that I have. It's actually from Harvest Right. I am just gonna use these kind of like an ice cube tray. I'm going to put about what I think is a tablespoon of this puree into each one of these little squares until it's all used up. I'm gonna put these in the freezer, and then I'll just pop them out of this silicone mold, put them in a freezer bag, and then keep them in the freezer until I am ready to make salsa. My salsa recipes generally call for a couple tablespoons of cilantro, and so this will work out perfectly. Next up is this kale. I'm gonna ultimately be freeze drying this kale, but first I'm gonna tear all of these leaves off of the stems. I will wash all of the leaf bits, and I'm going to steam them. It's kind of like blanching, but I'm just going to use a steamer, which is really just a kettle with some water on the bottom brought to a boil. And I'm going to use a steamer basket inside of there and put the lid on. I'm going to wait for probably maybe 5 to 8 minutes with the cover on. I'm gonna take it out and I will prepare that on freeze dryer trays. I'm gonna be freeze drying the kale so that I can then powder it and add it to soups and stews and things. Like I said, our family doesn't really like kale that much, but this is a way to still get the nutrition of the kale and not have to just eat it. After the kale is freeze dried and powdered, I'm gonna store that just in a jar on the shelf because I do plan to use that up this year. and so it doesn't have to go into long-term storage. After the kale, then I have this giant basket of spinach to deal with, and I'm gonna do pretty much the same exact thing that I did with the kale. I'm gonna start by ripping off the spinach from the stems, give it a good wash, and then I'm gonna steam it using the same pot, the same steamer basket and lid. I'm gonna wait another 5 to 8 minutes for it to steam, and then I'm gonna freeze dry this also, so it will go right on the freeze dryer trays and into the freeze dryer. But this time when it's done, I'm not gonna powder it. I'm just going to be putting them in Mylar bags with an oxygen absorber and seal it up good. And this will go into long-term storage. Well guys, that was a great harvesting and preserving session. I got 3 meals worth of freeze-dried spinach here. These will be used in like casseroles and soups and stews and that kind of thing. Almost a half jar, so a good start on kale powder, and a great start on cubed cilantro, frozen cilantro for my salsas later this summer. Now, keep in mind that if you're interested in a Harvest Right freeze dryer, make sure you check out their link in our description below. Also, the vacuum sealer that I use to seal up this jar, that can be found in our Amazon shop. You guys, I had a great time with you today on this video. If you're enjoying videos like this, make sure that you hit the subscribe button so you can see more. And remember that the best way that you can help us here on the homestead is just to share our videos on your social media. Until next time, thank you so much for stopping by our homestead. Take care and God bless.